What is a clan, really? In America, it's something you stay away from unless you're a bottom-of-the-barrel human being. In Clash of Clans, it's a thing you made with all of your high school friends a decade ago, but now haven't touched in about 9 years, with the one friend who still logs on every single day, carrying the entirety of the clan on his back. And in Naruto, it's any grouping of people that is quite literally 2 people or more with the same last name. But Nick, what do you mean by that? See, because while there is a myriad of different last names in the Naruto universe, like Haruno, Momochi, Ogata, so long as in the manga we didn't see 2 of these people with the same last name, those people don't belong in a clan. And thus, while someone try to make the argument that there's hundreds of clans in Naruto, there isn't actually that many. Even in Konoha, where Naruto's story is based, there's only 15 manga canon clans, which is still a good amount, obviously, but really when it comes down to it, only 7 or 8 of those clans are actually important. And thus, in actuality, while there is 15 confirmed manga canon clans in Konoha, the majority of you can probably only name 9 at most, with the truly talented amongst you possibly being able to name 11, which is why I think today's video is so interesting and so needed, because while we throw around the word clan all the time in Naruto, a lot of people don't understand how clans operate within Naruto, which is why we're going to put that topic to bed today, because today we're talking all of Konoha's clans ranked and explained. But before we get to ranking or explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you love the idea of me ranking and explaining things from your favorite anime and manga, go ahead and follow my other channel, The Weeb Commander, where instead of talking about Naruto and Boruto, I talk all other anime and manga. And if you just like the idea of me talking about anime and manga, go ahead and follow my anime podcast, Talk is Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happened in anime and manga this week. It's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So it's important to note before heading into this video that I'm approaching this video like I approach the majority of my all things in Naruto ranked and explained videos. That is to say that I'm only going to be talking about canon entries on this list. And while there isn't a whole lot of non-canon clans on this list, really the only non-canon clans are the Fuma Clan, who we've talked about at length. You know everything you need to know about them. The Tenma Uzumaki Clan, the Namade Suzumeno Clan, the Kohaku Clan, and the Unikuma Clan. That is to say, all in all, there's 5 non-canon clans that exist within Konoha. And genuinely, the only amongst those 5 that's even remotely interesting is the Fuma Clan. And considering the fact that there is 16 manga and or novel canon clans in Konoha, and we all know how long it takes Nick to make videos over 10 entries long, we're going to be keeping out the non-interesting and non-canon clans. Got it? Good. However, I am going to be approaching this video in a slightly different way than I've been approaching my All Things in Naruto Explained series I've been doing recently, and that key difference is I'm going to be ranking these clans. But ranking them on what criteria? How many members are in the clan, whether or not they're still around, or their peak power. While all of those things are going to be taken into consideration, the key consideration we're going to be using to build out this ranking list is the peak power of all of the clans on the list. But what do I mean by peak power? Well, I mean the strength of the clan at the moment when it was its strongest. Because obviously the power of a lot of the clans on this list is transitory, with clans like the Uchiha, Senju, and Uzumaki being 3 of the strongest clans in Konoha's history and now having basically completely no presence in Konoha whatsoever. And thus to consider those clans some of the weaker clans in Konoha just doesn't feel right. And with that, that's all the rules out of the way. So let's get into our first entry on this list, which is an honorable mention, the Huga Clan. Oh, what's that? You don't know the Huga Clan? How dare you? Do you want to know why you don't know the Huga Clan? Because technically they're not from Konoha and they only exist in Gaara's light novel. But light novels are as canon as the manga and in some circumstances override the canonicity of the manga, so the Huga Clan is as canon as any other clan on this list. On top of that, rather interestingly, the Huga Clan is also the most recent clan to join Konoha. See, the Huga Clan originally comes from Suna, or the Hidden Sand. They're a matrilineal shinobi clan, meaning that they tie their lineage through their mother's side. To simplify that, it's basically like they take their mother's last name as opposed to their father's. It's more complex than that, but there's really no reason to get into all that. Now, the Huga, while a shinobi clan, are almost explicitly information gatherers or medical nin, and they fill a background role in the military of the Hidden Sand. And this is actually why the members of this clan are actually referred to as the people who work behind the scenes, which is actually why up until the events of Gaara Hiden, no member of the Huga family had ever made their way to the center of Suna's government, which is why they'd never been displayed in the manga. However, because of the events of Gaara Hiden, where one of the members of the Huga family, specifically Hakuto Huga, was placed in the beginnings of an arranged marriage proposal with Gaara, the Hoki family in Garhiden, Gaara's light novel, finally took a step into the limelight. However, Hakuto didn't want to marry Gaara because she was already in love with another man. That man's name was Shishima, who is also a member of the Hoki family. So Shishima and Hakuto planned an elaborate kidnapping plan to allow them to escape Suna, which got found out by Gaara, but Gaara gave them mercy, and then they decided to move to Konoha so they could be away from Gaara, the Hidden Sand, and all the political nonsense, which is why the Hoki Clan currently exists inside of Konoha, and why there are honorable mention. And if you thought that story was riveting, oh boy, do I got more for you. Because coming in last place at number 15 in terms of strongest clans in Konoha, we have the Izuno clan. But Nick, who are the Izunos? Well, for those of you who haven't been watching the Boruto anime, you won't know the Izunos. Because while the Izunos, specifically Wasabi, do technically exist in the Boruto manga, they exist in a much bigger capacity in Boruto's anime. And honestly, that was kind of a mistake. Because the Izuno are not only wildly uninteresting, but are also kind of just a cat version of the Inuzuka. Except instead of having cat companions, which would be kind of cool, they just use cat-based ninjutsu. Now, technically, by going off the confines of manga canonicity, the Inazuna aren't a clan, as the only manga canon Inazuno is Wasabi. However, since the anime did show us 3 additional Inazuno, the rest of Wasabi's family, technically they do fall into the categorization of a clan. Tie that into the fact that cat covering, the technique that Wasabi uses that gives her chakra ears and chakra gloves and a chakra tail, is said to be a hidden technique of the Inazuno clan. Izuno. For some reason, I'm struggling with that word. So why are they in last place, you ask? Well, it's a good question. Because the very, very little information we do know about the Izuno clan is that almost none of their members ever become Chunin, and maybe none of them have ever been a Jonin. But what do I mean by that? Well, Wasabi tells us that none of the clansmen that she's ever known have ever become a Jonin, and that she herself is the youngest ever Izuno to become a Chunin, and the only one in the clan to ever become a Chunin before adulthood. Tie that into the fact that even when the Izunos do reach adulthood, that only a few of them have ever even become Chunin. And yeah, you don't have the making of the world's most impressive clan. And this is probably because their hidden technique, cat covering, basically just makes them a ninja. As when they activate their cat covering, they get a heightened sense of hearing, smell, and reflexes, which is kind of just like the Inuzuka's 4-leg technique, but worse. And trust me when I tell you, the Inuzuka aren't that high on this list. But speaking of clans that only have 1 manga canon member, why don't we move to our number 14 spot, which is the Shimura clan.
Nick, I thought we said in order to be a clan, they had to have 2 or more manga canon characters.
Unfortunately, those rules are subject to change. See, because while technically, yes, Danzo is the only manga canon Shimura character, he's actually the only Shimura character in the manga and the anime. The Shimura clan is a very well-established and storied clan within Konoha. And we know this because the exposition dump that Danzo gave us about the Shimura clan joining the newly founded Konoha alongside the Sarobi clan. That is to say that the 2 first clans that joined Konoha after the Senju and the Uchiha came together were the Sarobi and the Shimura, which is why Danzo and Hiruzen's rivalry burned so brightly, because they both came to the village around the same time, as they were alive when the village was founded. And while we technically don't know any other Shimura clansmen, we do know from Danzo that both his father and grandfather died on the battlefield, proving that they have a storied track record within Konoha, or possibly within the Warring States period, which could have been why Madara was so surprised when he heard the Shimura clan was going to be joining Konoha. Aside of that, that's literally all we know. And since the Shimura don't have a hidden technique or a summoning animal that's passed down through their lineage, we can't really extrapolate on how powerful the other members of the Shimura clan were. And thus the Shimura clan's peak power was probably Danzo in his battle against Sasuke at the bridge, or possibly Danzo when he was younger, but I believe Danzo was probably at the peak of his strength when he had an arm full of Sharingan that he could use to bring himself back to life. But enough about relevant characters, let's move on to irrelevant characters, because coming up at number 13, we have the Lee Clan. The Lee Clan? Like Rock Lee? Yeah, like Rock Lee. But Nick, we never met Rock Lee's parents. You're right, we didn't. But he had a son. And because Rock Lee had a son in Metal Lee, technically he qualifies to be considered the head of the Lee Clan. Yeah, I know it's stupid, that's just how it works in Naruto. But in actuality, there might be other members of the Lee Clan. In fact, in episode 363 of Shippuden, in the 4th Great Shinobi World War, we see on the battlefield somebody bearing a great resemblance to Rock Lee and Might Guy. And this person is brought back into the story in episode 20 of Rock Lee and his ninja pals, and is credited in the credits as Pac Lee. So there might be a 3rd member, so shout out to Rock Lee. Now, unfortunately for Rock Lee and Metal Lee, Might Guy doesn't fall within this clan, as Might Guy is from the Might Clan, not the Guy Clan. Because what's interesting about Rock Lee and the Lee Clan as a whole is that Rock Lee and Metal Lee follow Western naming tradition. That is to say that they're known in Japanese as Rock Lee as opposed to Lee Rock, while other people like Sasuke and Naruto are known as Uzumaki Naruto or Uchiha Sasuke. This is why Might Guy and Might Dai share the Might part, not the Guy part or the Dai part. Though ironically, the Might Clan, not considered a clan. I don't know. I don't make the rules, but if the Might Clan was a clan, they'd just be one above the Lee Clan. Because, well, it may not necessarily seem like it right now, the Lee Clan in Boruto is probably at the peak of its strength, and it's probably only getting stronger every single day. Now, I say probably because Metal Lee hasn't been in the Boruto manga for what feels like, oh, I don't know, 70 chapters? Because Metal Lee, much akin to Wasabi, doesn't really exist in the manga. And while he has a much bigger role in the anime, I wouldn't say it's bigger or even more important, but he is around more. In terms of potential, he doesn't seem to match up to even his father, but I guess in terms of not existing in the story, he's right on par with Dad. But if we assume that somewhere Metal Lee is training with Rock Lee to get stronger in taijutsu, then that would mean that with every day that passes, Metal Lee is getting stronger, and since Rock Lee isn't that old as the rest of the Konoha, I guess 12 now, and since Rock Lee is training every single day, that means that Rock Lee is probably still well within his prime. I mean, Kakashi's still in his prime, and he's in his 50s. So considering the fact that Rock Lee is able to open to presumably the 7th gate, and is the head of the Suicide Corps, Metal Lee is unfortunately a bit more disappointing than Rock Lee, as Metal Lee can only open the first of the 8 gates accidentally. And while he does make up for this by having a natural drunken fist that comes through his anxiety, he's not nearly as impressive as his father was when he was his age. So they're pretty low on the list. But enough about characters you know and possibly love, let's get to some characters that really fill out the backgrounds of this story. Because coming in at number 12, we have the Fuma Clan. Nick, who are the Fuma Clan? And that's a great question, because there's genuinely no reason to know them. The Fuma Clan are a clan distantly related to the Uchiha Clan, and they're famous in the Hidden Rain and Konoha. They're well known far and wide for their aggression and their battle style that revolves around their Fuma Shuriken, which is just a giant back-sized 4-pointed shuriken that they toss at people. Now, are they the only people who use these Fuma Shuriken? Nope. Hiruzen uses the biggest one we've ever seen. Zabuza and Sasuke use them in the Land of Waves, and Toroi, that's T-O-R-O-I, also used them in the 4th Great Shinobi World War. I'm sure you don't remember who that was. What, you don't remember the magnet release user who was able to control giant shurikens with his magnet release? How dare you? But Nick, if the Fuma Clan is distantly related to the Uchiha, surely they have the Sharingan. Right? No, the Fuma Clan is massive, and they've actually had more of an impact on the story than even you've realized. See, one of the most prevalent roles that the Fuma Clan played in Naruto's story is the fact that Jiraiya once crossed paths with a member of the Fuma Clan while he was out doing S-ranked ninja missions. And in this battle, the Fuma Clansmen gave Jiraiya a good fight. However, we do know the result of this battle was Jiraiya giving this Fuma Clansman a scar on his forehead. And years later, Jiraiya would have to battle against this Fuma Clansman once again. However, this time around, they were the animal path. And on top of that, after the Uchiha clans, we'll call it a downfall, the Fuma Clan took over as Konoha's police force. With Kotaro Fuma, who looks like his profile picture on Facebook would be taken in the seat of an F-150, assuming the head role of police chief. Since we don't necessarily know how big or powerful this clan is, we kind of unfortunately just have to go by legacy, and by the fact that apparently the Fuma Clan is large enough to staff the entirety of the Konoha police force, which means in actuality the Fuma Clan is probably hundreds of people deep. And while none of those shinobi are necessarily anything special, the fact that one Fuma Clansman was able to battle against Jiraiya and survive means that there is some potential for members of the Fuma Clan to be high-functioning shinobi. So for those reasons, and those reasons alone, the Fuma Clan gets the 12 spot. And now that we've got to the 11th seed, we're finally going to get to some clans that everybody knows. So coming in at 11th place, we have the Inuzuka. The Inuzuka are a big clan. We know of 5 manga canon members of the Inuzuka clan. Those members are, and I'm going to read them off, Akita, Gaku, Hana, Kiba, and Sume. And every single member of the Inuzuka clan also has a partner canine, with some members like Hana Inuzuka having 3 partner canines. Now, while not a lot is known about any of the Inuzuka outside of Kiba, we do know that Gaku Inuzuka was present when Minato went toe-to-toe with Killer B and A, which means that Gaku Inuzuka was trusted to be strong enough to battle alongside Minato. And both Kiba's oldest sister, Hana, and his mother Sume have proven to be at least as strong as him. And thus for the majority of Naruto, there was 4 active fighting Inuzuka that played semi-prevalent roles in the plot. While Akita Inuzuka isn't a fighter, she's a lead scientist in the Scientific Ninja Tool division of Konoha, now. That still means now in Boruto's timeline, there's 5 active Inuzuka. Now, the members of the Inuzuka family all rely on cooperation in jutsu, such as Fang passing Fang and Fang rotating Fang. Techniques that all take advantage of the Inuzuka's sharp claws and teeth. On top of this, members of the Inuzuka clan are able to communicate with their canines even though nobody else is, which allows them to pass messages with their partner that are indecipherable for anybody else trying to listen in. On top of that, they have the greatest sense of smell out of anybody in the entirety of the Naruto universe, as they're able to concentrate chakra into their nose to increase the range with which they're able to smell. Tie that into their heightened senses, speed, and strength, and the Inuzuka are up close and personal, rip and shred taijutsu specialists. But when Kiba's your claim to fame, and he's just now a dog food influencer, it's not going to do so great for you. So they get to exist in the number 11 spot, not even breaking the top 10. But you know who is breaking the top 10? The number 10 spot, which is the Huga Clan.
Oh, Nick, what do you mean the Huga Clan's at number 10? They have both Sakumo and Kakashi.
Those are 2 of the strongest ninjas in Konoha's history.
Yeah, not simultaneously. We're talking about peak concurrent power here, and unfortunately, Sakumo's peak and Kakashi's peak were pretty far away from each other. See, because, well, yes, of course, Sakumo Hatake was known as the Great White Fang of the Leaf and had a run-on-sight order. In fact, people were so afraid of Kakashi's father that they were running from Kakashi in the Third Great Shinobi World War because he had Sakumo's blade and his hair color, and he was a child. And while we don't necessarily know how strong Sakumo Hatake was, it was said in a passing comment that Sakumo Hatake was stronger than all 3 of the legendary Sannin combined. And while Sakumo Hatake was never alive during the legendary Sannin's peak powers, still being able to say that Sakumo Hatake was stronger than an 18 to 20-year-old version of the legendary Sannin is very impressive. And thus, all in all, I tend to scale Sakumo Hatake somewhere in the region of Hanzo the Salamander and Granny Chiyo, all of whom are definitively mid to high Kage level at their respective peaks, which is a really good peak. Having not only 1 Kage threat, but 2 Kage threats in your clan is crazy. But when Sakumo Hatake was out there battling against the likes of Granny Chiyo and Hanzo the Salamander, Kakashi was like 6 and in the Shinobi Academy. And while he was an insanely talented 6-year-old, he was still 6. And then Sakumo Hatake did a little and just like that, Kakashi was alone in the Huga Clan. But Kakashi also became an absolute monster, with the peak of his strength happening at the end of the Fourth Great Shinobi World War when he was DMS Kakashi. And in that moment, he was one of, if not the most powerful person on Earth. But unfortunately, we're talking about a singular entity, who also objectively was using borrowed power. If you want to talk about the longest peak strength that Kakashi was able to sustain for longer than 2 or 3 minutes, then that would most likely be 2 to 3 years after the conclusion of the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, where Kakashi created Purple Lightning. And honestly, if you wanted to say that Kakashi in Boruto is now at his peak strength, I couldn't even hold that against you. But Kakashi in Boruto, now as it stands, is a mid to high level Kage threat, much akin to how his father scaled prior to his death. And thus that's the peak strength of the Huga Clan. One person who is a mid to high Kage level threat. And considering the fact that the rest of the entries on this list are actual clans filled with hundreds, if not thousands of people, one person who's a mid to high Kage level threat is unfortunately not going to be able to stack up. Kakashi is not Madara. That's just the truth. Well, Kakashi could absolutely probably clutch a 20v1, a 30v1, maybe even a 100v1. You start throwing several hundred Jonin and Chunin at him, there's going to be some problems that arise. Outside of that, unfortunately, the Huga Clan doesn't have much in terms of lore. They don't have a hidden jutsu, they had a white chakra blade that Kakashi destroyed, and they have white hair. That's about it. There are some theories that the Huga Clan is in some way or another tied to the Inuzuka Clan, but those are just theories. But we do have a lot of information about our number 9 spot, because coming in at number 9, we have the Yamanaka.
Oh, Nick, you think Kakashi could beat the Yamanaka Clan 1v Clan?
No, I don't. The Yamanaka Clan is huge. Let me go over the Yamanaka Clan roster that we know. It's Sai, Fu, Ino, Ino's mother, whose name we don't know, Inoichi, Inojin, Kohan, and Santa. Yeah, that's right. They got Santa on their side. And Santa was actually an integral part of Kakashi's battle strategy against the reincarnated Zabuza and Haku. And those are just the Yamanaka that we know. See, the reason that I say the Yamanaka clan is massive isn't because we know a bunch of Yamanaka characters, it's because the Yamanaka are actively in control of maintaining Konoha's barrier team, which is an entire team of people that are dedicated to maintaining the barrier around Konoha that registers all chakra signatures that go in and out of the village. Which means there is dozens, if not hundreds, of unnamed Yamanaka who are incredible sensors doing the work in the background of Konoha. And we consider the fact that almost every single Yamanaka is well versed in things like the mind transfer jutsu or the mind disruptance jutsu, an army of a couple of dozen or a couple of hundred people who all have that specific moveset. While it doesn't seem that intimidating, could be an absolute force to contend with. See, because while the Yamanaka clan usually operate as the backbone of the Ina Shikacho formation, on their own, they can be absolutely absolutely deadly. See, well, the Yamanakas are usually known for their espionage abilities, as their ability to swap into somebody else's body allows for them to infiltrate other villages or camps with ease. Yamanaka clansmen also just have the ability to switch into your body and throw you off a cliff. And so long as they're well versed enough in their mind transfer jutsu, or simply just strong enough, they can take over almost anybody. And while the mind transfer jutsu has been memed on rather endlessly because of mostly Ino, they have other techniques like their mind-body disturbance technique that allowed people like Inoichi, Ino's father, to cause entire groups of enemy ninjas to battle against each other, allowing for Inoichi, without leaving his own body, to immobilize an entire force of other Jonin. And that's just one Yamanaka. Now, albeit he was the head of the clan, but still. But since we're talking about the Inishikacho formation, let's talk about our number 8 spot, which is the Akamichi. The Akamichi are also a massive clan, one of the royal clans of Konoha, actually. The members of the Akamichi clan that we know are Chobi, Chocho, Choji, Choji's mother, whose name we also don't know, Choza, Doto, Makaro, Maruten, Shito, Torafu, and Karui. Hey, if we're including Sai in the Yamanaka, that means we're including Karui in the Akamichi. Now, obviously, like the Yamanaka, the Akamichi are involved in the Inishikacho formation, which was created by the Sarobi. However, the Akamichi fill a much different role than the Yamanaka in the Inishikacho formation. Well, the Yamanaka are supposed to act as a bridge between the Akamichi and the Nara. The Akamichi are supposed to act as the muscle of the Inishikacho formation, keeping people away from the Nara and Yamanaka members. And they do this through their hidden technique, calorie control, which is a hidden technique passed to the Akamichi clan that focuses on yang release. See, specifically, the Akamichi clan is able to convert calories in their body into chakra, and they can funnel that chakra into yang release that allows them to control the size of either their limbs or their entire body. Now, at the lowest level of things, Akamichi clansmen are able to make their arms or their legs or their stomachs rather large. However, at the highest level of Akamichi's skill, members are able to make themselves the size of the ghetto statue, that is, the height of a mountain, according to a data book, at the speed of lightning. Let me say that again. Akamichi clansmen, specifically usually Akamichi clan heads like Choza and Choji, are able to make themselves the size of a mountain at the speed of lightning. So much akin to the Colossal Titan's transformation, the Akamichi are able to make themselves 3 times larger than the Colossal Titan instantaneously. On top of this, the head of the clan is usually able to use something known as butterfly mode, which is a form of calorie control where the Akamichi clansman in question is converting so many calories into chakra that it begins to seep out of chakra nodes in their back and create butterfly wings made out of pure chakra that the mountain-sized man or woman can use to fly. Now, if hypothetically they aren't able to use the butterfly technique quite yet, the Akamichi too have the 3 colored pills. Food pills that allow them to access 100 times their strength should they eat the 3rd red pill. However, since after eating the red pill, they'll convert all of the fat in their body into calories, this will lead to their inevitable death. You know, unless you give Tsunade a book. Now, the Akamichi, much like the Inazuka, were also blessed with the privilege of having one of their members serve beside Minato. See, because in the same battle where Minato found himself across from Killer B and A, Torafu Akamichi was standing right beside him. Now, with all of these legendary clans that have been around in Konoha since the very beginning, it's hard to nail down exactly when their peak power was. I mean, after all, Choji is the 16th head of the Akamichi clan. But considering the fact that Choji and Choso were able to go head-to-head relatively well against the Ghetto statue, and that's only the 2 heads of the clans, ignoring the dozens, if not hundreds of other of Akamichis that were also undoubtedly on the battlefield, then yeah, I'd say you have a pretty powerful clan. But not as powerful as the Nara. Saying it, I feel bad about it now that I've said it. They shouldn't be this high. You know what? No. Stick with me. Because while many people believe that the Nara clan is just Shikamaru and Shikadai and Tamari, it's not. The Nara clan is very understatedly large. Now, technically, some of that has to do with the fact that Hakuto, the girl we talked about from the Hoki clan earlier, after leaving Suda, went to go live with the Nara clan, so she is technically a Nara clan member. But outside of that, there's also Da and Nara, Enshu, Ensui, Kasuga, Mine, Shikadai, Shukaku, Shikamaru, Suzaku, Yoshina, Shizugane, and Tamari. Shikizane is Hakuto's husband, so he's also technically a member of the Nara clan. But Nick, who are all those people? Almost all of them are just background Jonin or Chunin or special Jonin, but that doesn't mean that all of them are incredibly well practiced in their clan's hidden jutsu. And they are. We know this. We've seen the majority of these characters use Shadow Strangle and Shadow Bind. And while Shikamaru, Shikadai, and Shikaku are the only people in the lineage of the Nara clan known for their outstanding intelligence, the Nara clan did start off as a clan of doctors. And this is actually why they're referred to as the Nara Clan. See, Nara in Japanese refers to deer. Well, it more technically refers to an area where a bunch of deer live. Now, the Nara Clan in Naruto are the protectors of a mythical forest that's filled with deer. And the reason the Nara Clan created the shadow bind technique in the first place is so that they could stop deer without killing them and take their antlers, because deer antler is used in a lot of traditional Japanese medicines. This is why the Nara had a book of generational medicine that Tsunade was able to use to heal Choji after he took the red tricolored pill. And thus the Nara not only have a special connection to their relatively powerful hidden technique, which is shadow bind jutsu, but they also have a deep connection to healing arts. On top of this, while Shikamaru, Shikaku, and Shikadai are the only ones known for their outstanding intellect, this doesn't mean that other members of the Nara clan weren't also included in Inashikacho formations, as the Nara's Shadowbind technique was necessary for Yamanaka members to have sitting targets to shoot with their mind transfer jutsu. Tie this into the fact that the Nara clan has the current Hokage in Naruto, and Shikadai is quickly approaching his father's level of intellect as he's just becoming basically mini Shikamaru. And while the Nara clan isn't filled with burly, strong fighters that are able to break down entire force with a sweep of their arm, the clan does contain some of the smartest people in the entirety of the Naruto universe who have used their intelligence to gain massive political standing. Tie this into the fact that there's really no reason for us to assume that the Nara clan is any smaller than either the Yamanaka or Akamichi clan, and when you consider the fact that Shikamaru and Shikadai were both made heads of the Inashikacho formation that they were a part of, then it makes sense to assume that if we're assuming equal numbers, that the Nara clan would be stronger than the Akamichi and the Yamanaka. On top of that, I'm assuming that Shikamaru would beat both Choji and Ino in a one-on-one battle. But enough about the members of the Inashikacho, let's talk about the people who brought the Inashikacho formation together. Those would be, coming in at our number 6 spot, the Sarobi clan. See, while the Inashika and Cho part of the Inashikacho formation is massively important, in order to guide the Inashikacho formation to be as strong as they possibly could be, a Sarobi clansman is directed to guide them. This is why Asuma was in charge of Shikamaru's team, and technically why Konoha should have been in charge of the new Team 10. On top of this, it's also a Sarobi clansman's role to give earrings to each individual member of the Inashikacho formation to strengthen their bonds. But Nick, in Shikamaru's Inashikacho formation, the only person who died was the Sarobi. Well, yeah, but that's because he was in charge. And while Konoha is certainly disappointing, Hiruzen definitely wasn't. See, here's the thing. Outside of the Senju and the Uchiha clan, the Sarobi clan is the oldest clan in Konoha. As like we've already stated, the Sarobi and the Shimura clans were the first clans to join up with Konoha. And the Sarobi clan, while technically not a royal clan of Konoha, is probably the most slept on clan in the entirety of Konoha. Hiruzen, the third Hokage, led Konoha through the first, second, and third Great Shinobi World Wars, boxed with Kurama, and pseudo defeated Orochimaru at almost 80 years old. Asuma was a member of the 12 Guardian Ninjas of the Land of Fire, which means at one point he was one of the 12 strongest ninjas in the entirety of not just Konoha, but the Land of Fire, and therefore he was specifically selected by the Fire Daimyo to protect him. And Konoha, while he's not all that impressive right now, is technically the aide to the Hokage. On top of that, Kurenai is technically a member of the Sarobi clan by marriage, and Mirai, Asuma and Kurenai's daughter, is one of the stronger up-and-coming ninja in Konoha. Ties into the fact that the Sarobi have never had an extinction-level event, and therefore are probably the biggest clan in Konoha outside of maybe the Aaram and the Huga, and you have the makings for an incredibly powerful clan. And we saw this in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, when the Sarobi clan worked together to solidify the quicklime that was meant to immobilize the Ten-Tails, where we saw a line of 20 plus Sarobi clansmen all using Jonin level fire release to quickly solidify quicklime. And that's the thing. To really drive home the point that the will of fire burns in the chest of every single Sarobi clansman, while the Sarobi don't necessarily have a hidden jutsu, they do have a proclivity for fire release. And thus they use techniques like ash pile burning, Asuma's ash technique that he lights with a flint in his mouth, and the Great Flame technique, which is essentially the Sarobi version of the Great Fireball. Now, it's somewhat hard to nail down when the Sarobi's peak power was, but it's safe to assume that it was somewhere around Hiruzen's peak power, because after all, Hiruzen, before Hashirama stole the title from him, was known as the God of Shinobi, and is one of the strongest Hokage, and therefore one of the strongest ninjas of all time. But that doesn't mean the Sarobi, who are an unofficial royal clan of Konoha, would be able to edge out the other actual royal clans. Because coming up at number 5, we have the Aaram. I'm aware that the Sarobi have at least edged out one of the royal clans, because the Akamichi are one of the 4 royal clans of Konoha, but they're not edging out the other 3. Remember earlier, like a minute ago, how I said the Sarobi are one of the most slept on clans in all of Konoha? I was wrong. It's actually the Aaram. See, the Aaram are actually one of the 4 royal clans of Konoha that include the Aaram, the Akamichi, the Huga, and the Uchiha. And while the Aaram may not seem as big as a lot of the other clans we've already listed thus far in the list, they are. They're just in the root. See, it's been told to us pretty much time and time again that Danzo had a massive proclivity for Aburame members. One, because of their dark and dour demeanors, and two, because of how well their techniques worked in assassination. See, while we only technically know of two Aburame root members, those being Terune and Yoji, the reason we only know of those two is because those two were Danzo's right-hand men at different periods in Danzo's root career. And you can bet your bottom dollar if Danzo is willing to make two separate Aburame his right-hand men, then there is legions of other Aburame who also exist in the root. But let's quickly go over all the Aburame members that we know. There is Haruka Aburame, Muta Aburame, Shibi, Shikoro, Shino, Tatsuma, Terune, and Yoji. Now, the three most important there are obviously Shino, Terune, and Yoji, who are all prestigious geniuses amongst the Aburame clan. How does one become a prestigious genius amongst the Aburame clan? Well, it boils down to affinity. See, the Aburame have a plethora of insects that they can use. However, an Aburame clansman has to have affinity with a certain insect to use it, which means the Aburame clansman in question has to allow this insect to live inside of their body, feeding off their chakra. And if said Aburame clansman is able to find a synergistic relationship with that insect, then that insect will breed inside of them, making even more of that insect for the Aburame clansman to control. And these insects can be anything from the Kikaichu, which is basically just a standard beetle that the Aburame clansmen use as massive hands or tails to hold on to things, or walls to stop incoming projectile ninjutsu, to the Kidaichu, which is an insect that requires a certain amount of chakra. When it gets too much, it grows in size massively, erupting from the inside of whatever it's inside of. But there's even deadlier and scarier insects that the Aburame clansmen have access to. There's also insects like the Rinkaichu, which Terune had an affinity for, which are nano-sized insects that crawl across his skin, and anybody he comes into contact with while this is activated has a flesh-eating bacteria injected into their skin that slowly degrades their body away. There's also insects like the Kochu, which is an insect that Yoji Aburame used to basically kill Shisui. See, the Kochu is a mosquito-sized insect whose bite not only paralyzes the person it bites, but also injects a lethal amount of untraceable poison. And thus, while using these highly specialized insects is rare, every individual member of the Aburame clan we've ever seen, even the lesser-known ones, like Shibi and Shikuru, have used specialized insects that other Aburame clansmen haven't used. And thus, when it really boils down to it, the Aburame kind of have an answer for everything in the form of an insect that lives inside of their skin. And while that sounds awful, even though Kishimoto refuses to accept this, it's one of the most effective ways to battle against Otsutsuki. So as it currently stands, in combat against the Otsutsuki, the Aburame clan might actually be the strongest clan on Earth. But if I keep yelling that take from the top of buildings, Kishimoto might send me to a padded room. But enough about royal clans of Konoha, let's talk about clans that aren't even technically from Konoha, but have such a standing relationship with Konoha that they're considered Konoha clans. Because coming up at number 4, we got the Uzumaki.
Oh, Nick, what are you talking about? The Uzumaki didn't exist in Konoha. They were in the land of whirlpools. It was just that Mito married Hashirama.
Well, yes. And no, let's not forget that the Uzumaki had such a clear and prevalent presence in Konoha that they built Uzumaki temples all around the village of Konoha that Orochimaru eventually stumbled upon and raided. And while we can't necessarily say that there was more Uzumakis in Konoha than just Kushina, it's safe to assume that at the time of Mito and Hashirama's wedding and the foundation of Konoha, that a fair amount of Uzumakis were living in Konoha. On top of that, considering the fact that there is a spiral in the center of the leaf that is Konoha's leaf symbol, makes me feel like the Uzumaki are a Konoha clan. And if they are, then they are surely one of the strongest Konoha clans to ever exist. So the Uzumaki clan are distant relatives of the Senju clan. That is to say that the Uzumaki clan, like the Senju clan, are descendants of Asura. On top of this, based on the fact that the Uzumaki clan was able to sustain an entire village by itself, which was the land of whirlpools, makes it seem as though the Uzumaki clan was one of the biggest clans ever, because even the Senju had to come together with the Uchiha to substantiate an entire village. And when you think about an entire village of Uzumakis, the fact that they were wiped out seems kind of crazy, because the Uzumaki were known for their insane life force that allowed them to live long beyond what was considered a natural human lifetime. The life force was also so incredibly abundant that the majority of them had a healing factor of some sort. This is why when people bite into Karin, they're able to heal their chakra and their wounds, because by biting into Karin, they're accessing her massive life force. On top of their massive life force, they were also known for their proclivity in Fuinjutsu, as it was a rite of passage in the Uzumaki clan to be able to use adamantite sealing chains, a technique that allowed for an on the brink of death Kushina to hold down a full-strength Kurama, a technique that allowed for Karin to destroy a Madara-made wood golem, a technique that was so incredibly powerful that when Kushina made a dome of adamantite chains around Kurama, not only could Kurama not escape, but nobody could break in. And when you tie that into the fact that they're also incredible sensors, as Karin showed us that one of the abilities that the Uzumaki had was the mind's eye of the Kagura, that allows her to, by closing her eyes and opening her third eye in her brain, to look into the distance dozens of kilometers and see through walls and even see if people are related or lying. It's basically the Byakugan, but instead of pumping a bunch of blood to your eyes, you just close them. When you consider all of this, hammering down what is the strongest era of Uzumaki is kind of difficult, because objectively, there was a time that both Naruto and Nagato coexisted as Uzumakis, meaning that Pain and Naruto were both repping it up for the Uzumaki clan. There was a time when there were so many Uzumakis they could substantiate an entire village, and now, as it currently stands, Naruto, Himawari, and Boruto are three of the most powerful people we've ever seen in the Naruto universe, and they're all Uzumakis. But the only problem with considering the Naruto, Boruto, Himawari triangle right now is that Naruto's in the Daikoku-ten and doesn't have Kurama, and Himawari is just now getting powerful. So does the combined forces of Boruto, Himawari, and a Daikoku-ten Naruto outweigh an entire village of Uzumakis, or does it outweigh Nagato plus Sage Mode Naruto? I don't know, but what I do know is that all three of these iterations are more powerful than anything we've talked about on this list thus far. And that talking point gets even stickier when you consider our number 3 spot, because coming in at number 3, we have another member of the Konoha royal clans, the Huga Clan, which has been stated to be the strongest clan in Konoha, which might be true right now, but is certainly not true for the entirety of Konoha's history. See, because the only reason the Huga Clan is now currently the strongest clan in Konoha is because the Senju and the Uchiha don't exist anymore. But as it currently stands, the Huga Clan is probably the biggest clan in Konoha. Because just to go over the people from the Huga Clan who we know the names of, it's Hanabi, Hayashi, Hinata and Hanabi's mother, whose name we also don't know, Heizashi, Koheta, Iroha, Ko, Natsu, Neji, Tokuma, Boruto, and Himawari. Yes, they're both Uzumaki and Hyuga. They count for both clans. Himawari will probably be the next head of the Hyuga clan after maybe Hanabi. I know their last name is Uzumaki, but that's just because Naruto's last name is Uzumaki. The Hyuga are direct descendants of Hamura Otsutsuki, the brother of Hagoromo, the Sage of Six Paths. And while Hamura technically had 2 different descendancy lines, those who lived with him on the moon, who were known as Otsutsukis, and those who continued living on Earth, who were known as Hyugas, the Hyugas are still around. The Otsutskis are gone. So really, when it boils down to it, the Hyugas are the only remaining descendants of Hamura Otsutsuki, which is why they're the inheritors of the Byakugan, the base eye of the Otsutsuki, an eye that allows them to see in 360 degrees with only one blind spot being over the second vertebrae in their spine. On top of this, with a 360 degree field of view, they're also able to see Tenketsu points, 300 plus points in every chakra system that can either be shut down or amplified with a technique that all Hyugas use known as Gentle Fist, which allows the Hyugas to either be deadly warriors or fantastic support characters. But shutting down or amplifying Tenketsu points isn't all that the Hyugas are able to do with Gentle Fist. They're also able to use techniques like Twin Lion Fist, which is an amplification of the Gentle Fist that allows them to sap the chakra and absorb it of anybody they come into contact with. On top of this, they're also able to use techniques like Revolving Heaven, which allows them to shoot chakra out of each and every single one of their Tenketsu points while spinning at a high velocity, creating a dome of chakra around them that stops all incoming projectiles. They're also able to create cups of air in their hands that they can shoot out as walls, and so much more. Really, when it comes down to it, in terms of practical taijutsu, nobody defeats the Hyugas. On top of that, with the power of the Byakugan, they're also incredible sensors. And since every Hyuga has a Byakugan, pretty much every single fighting Hyuga is able to achieve Jonin status. And considering the fact that there is possibly thousands of Hyugas between the main branch and the side branch families, which is corroborated by the fact that the Hyuga make up a large amount of Konoha's military, and soldiers from the Hidden Stone, when they joined the Shinobi Alliance, saw the Hyuga and remarked about how much trouble they gave them in previous wars, and that the Hyuga were considered such a threat by other villages that villages like the Hidden Cloud actively tried to abduct Hyuga members so that they could analyze the Byakugan, and all of those points point us in the direction of the Hyuga clan being one of, if not the most powerful clan in Konoha. Unfortunately for us, pinning down the Hyuga clan's strongest moment is a lot easier than basically anybody else on this list, because the Hyuga clan is as big as it's ever been, and Hinata is one of the most powerful heads of the Hyuga clan we've ever seen. On top of that, Boruto and Himawari must absolutely be considered when talking about how strong the Hyuga clan is. And while I know technically we've been considering wives as members of their husbands' clans because of the whole name swapping thing. Technically, if you want to go fourth wave feminism with it, Naruto is also a Hyuga member. But the Hyuga are only the strongest clan in Konoha because the Uchiha and Senju are gone. Because we all know if they were still around, the Hyuga wouldn't be talking all that smack. Which is why coming in at number 2, we have the Uchiha Clan, the last of the royal clans of Konoha, though they were never necessarily treated that way. In terms of known names, there is no clan bigger than the Uchiha Clan. Oh, you don't believe me? Here. Let's do this. The known names of the Uchiha Clan are Sakura, Baru, Fugaku, Hazuki, Hikaku, Inabi, Itachi, Izumi, Izuna, Kagami, Kagin, Madara, Mikoto, Nakanaori, Obito, Obito's grandmother, who's anime only, Rai, Sarada, Sasuke, Setsuna, Shisui, Taiko, Tajima, Tekka, Taiyaki, Uruchi, Yakami, and Yashiro. And if you're wondering, Nick, I don't know any of these people. Yeah, that's because most of those are background Uchihas who came from Itachi's 2 light novels. In fact, about 60% of those names come from Itachi's light novels, but Itachi's light novels revolve around the Uchiha, so that kind of makes sense. Now, the Uchiha, when they were around, also had a claim at being Konoha's strongest clan. And technically, that makes a lot of sense when you consider the fact that the Senju married out into the village and basically dissipated the second Konoha was founded, while the Uchiha went the Bible Belt route and kept the bloodlines pure. See, the Uchiha are the descendants of Indra Otsutsuki, and they, like the Hyuga, also awoke a dojutsu, their dojutsu being the Sharingan. And while the Sharingan pervade extrasensory perception abilities like the Byakugan, they weren't as precise as the Byakugan. The Sharingan also didn't give the user 360-degree FOV. But that's not the end of the world, because the Sharingan's also able to get better. Unlike the Byakugan. See, the Sharingan, when awoken, awakes with 1 Tomei. And this 1 Tomei Sharingan only ever activates when the Uchiha feels a strong swell of emotions, which was usually hatred, but we now know because of Sarada it doesn't necessarily have to be. Then as the respective Uchiha slowly gets better with their Sharingan, they awake more and more Tomei until eventually they have a 3 Tomei Sharingan. And that's where the majority of Uchiha members fizzle out. However, those rare Uchiha members who are lucky enough to watch their best friends die awaken a Mangekyo Sharingan, which not only gives you access to a Susanoo, the strongest defensive move in the entirety of the Naruto universe, but also 2 separate abilities, one tied to each eye. Don't use those eyes too much because then you'll go blind. You know, unless of course you're lucky enough to see one of your family members who also has an MS die, and then you take their eyes and you smash them into yours. And then you won't go blind, but you'll also have to think about that moment a lot. Now, the Uchiha were unfortunately cursed by the curse of hatred, which put them in a perpetual cycle of violence against the Senju clan, as they were perpetuating the battle that Indra and Asura had had thousands of years prior. And the cycle of hatred or cycle of violence is what made so many Uchiha awaken their Sharingan. Outside of the Sharingan, the Uchiha also had a propensity for fire release, as the coming of age test in the Uchiha clan was the ability to create a great fireball technique, or a kuton. And the Uchiha clan was so incredibly large that not only could they substantiate an entire section of Konoha to themselves, but there was also, like the Fuma Clan, enough of them to police the entirety of Konoha just by themselves. And thus there was hundreds, if not thousands, of Uchiha walking around with Sharingan and fireballs, and yet all it took was 2 angsty boys in the middle of the night to wipe them out. Now, nailing down the strongest moment for the Uchiha is also, fortunately, rather simple. It's when they first joined Konoha. When Madara was still a part of the Uchiha clan and living inside of Konoha, that was the strongest the Uchiha had ever been. At this point, Madara had EMS and hundreds of subordinates serving under him. While you could technically make an argument that the strongest the Uchiha ever were is when both Madara and Izuna were alive, I'd reckon that Madara with EMS is stronger than Madara and Izuna both with MS. And no, the strongest the Uchiha were was not when Itachi and Shisui were both alive, because at that point, Madara was dead and he's stronger than both of them. But all those names you know and all that strength doesn't match up to our number 1 entry on the list, the Senju, who weren't known for anything except for being good at everything. See, the name Senju itself means 1,000 tasks, because the Senju prided themselves on being incredibly well-rounded ninja, which they were able to accomplish because of their massive life forces. See, the Senju, as the most direct descendants of Indra, had incredibly large life forces that gave them long lives, healing factors, and the ability to substantiate massive, powerful jutsu. Because of this, the Senju could be incredibly multi-talented. Basically, anything they wanted to figure out, they could, which is why they were able to battle against the Uchiha for thousands of years, all without a dojutsu of their own. Now, a lot of people will say that a Senju ability is wood release and a Senju ability is Sage Mode. No, those are specific to Hashirama. The only thing specific to the Senju is a massive amount of life force and wide-branching abilities. In that plethora of abilities and the ability to bounce back from deadly wounds, at least in the case of Hashirama, is what inevitably led to the Senju defeating the Uchiha. But that brings us to the question, when were the Senju at their strongest? Well, ironically, it's the same situation as with the Uchiha. However, it's much more straightforward. The Senju were the strongest at the moment of the founding of Konoha. One, because Tobirama was still alive, unlike Izuna, and two, because Hashirama was at the peak of his power. And technically, I don't think we should be considering any Warring States versions of either the Senju or the Uchiha for their strongest versions, because at that point, they weren't Konoha clans. So, it wouldn't work. And with that, that's all of the clans in Konoha ranked and explained. But I'm curious to hear from you guys. What would your ranking of the clans in Konoha look like? And is there any other clans you want to hear me talk about? Tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell